Hey everyone, Mitch coming in from the Commander's Core Studio. Welcome to the show. So on today's episode, I'm going to be teaching you how to demolish your opponents for just about $5. According to Moxfield, the time of building this, $5.62. And yeah, there's a couple of components when it comes to choosing a commander that you can demolish your opponents with. On this kind of a budget, Ovika fit a lot of those factors. A 6/6 Phyrexian Nightmare with flying, with Ward 3, pay 3 life, and costs 5 blue and red. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, you get X 1/1 red Phyrexian Goblin creature tokens. Rex is the mana value of that spell. They gain haste until end of turn. This is the kind of commander that can just destroy your opponents with the cheapest of cards, because this is a commander that, well, first off, protects itself. It's got Ward 3, pay 3 life, so your opponent actually has to really dedicate themselves to try to take this out. And of course, yeah, they might not always be able to do that. And then on top of that, this is a commander that is a win condition in and of itself, being able to make you a massive, massive, massive army, especially if we really lean into that trigger. And yeah, we're going to be running, well, an absurd amount of non-creature spells, so we're going to make an absurd amount of Phyrexian Goblins. And again, they have haste, so we are going to be just smacking our opponents for a ton of damage. And of course, just not 1 damage per creature. We've got plenty of ways to pump them to just demolish our opponents. And yeah, we've got plenty of ways to get our commander out in absolutely no time and just get things going. A fantastic commander that, again, even on the lowest of budgets, can be so incredibly powerful that your opponents, if you know, sit down at the table like, hey, yeah, I just threw this deck together for like $5, they might not expect you to be as dominant as you are, and you definitely can dominate with a commander like this. And if you are interested in this deck, make sure you check out that deck list link in the description below. Keep in mind, this does not include the cost of basic lands or shipping, though you might already have those basics or you can borrow them from a friend, so yeah, just keep that in mind. With all that said though, let's jump into the tactics to see how we win with this crazy commander. So let's start things off with tag number 1, start your engines, because yeah, you're going to be seeing a lot of these kinds of cards. Mana rocks are huge for this commander because, well, again, it does cost 7 mana. We want to be able to ramp to get our commander out quickly, and also they are non-creature spells. So even when we cast Fire Diamond with our commander in play, yeah, we are getting 2 1/1 goblins that, again, we can really add to that amount throughout the game a lot, and of course they can hit for even more than just 1 damage regardless. An artifact that costs 2, enters battlefield, taps for a red. Sky Diamond, basically the exact same thing. This one does tap for a blue though. Moving on, Darksteel Ingot. Indestructible at 3 mana, tap for 1 mana of any color. So again, although there is a downside to utilizing a mana rock that is, well, this cheap, again, 12 cents, and there's a reason it's 12 cents because it's not that efficient. Again, 3 mana, taps for 1. We like our mana rocks to at least give us half the amount of mana back that we put into them. We are running just an absurd amount of mana rocks, and again, we kind of work on that efficiency with this commander where, hey, if a mana rock is more expensive like this one, we get more goblins, so we get more value on the other side of it. So also, we're going to be running Hierophant's Chalice. This can be a really funny way to just out of nowhere take someone out if they're at 1 life and they're like, well, I've got my defenses up, I should be fine. And all of a sudden, enters battlefield, target won't lose 1 life, you gain 1 life. Just a nice little effect. This one can tap for 9 colors. Again, we're not really worried at all about mana fixing. We've got an absurd amount of ways to ramp and fix our mana. Next up, Arnor Warren Shaku. Artifact for 3, taps for 8 colors, tap an untapped legendary permanent you control, untap it. So yeah, this can actually tap for 2 mana essentially, thanks to our commander, so it can be very, very, very efficient when our commander is in play. Next up, Manalith. Very simple, very, very just fine in this deck again. 3 mana, tap for 1 mana of any color. Again, we just want all the mana rocks essentially, so we can have all the mana, refill our hand in many ways, and just keep casting spell after spell after spell, non-creature spell after spell after spell. Moving on, Pristine Talisman. Tap, you gain a life. Cool. With also, you know, getting a colorless mana as well. Next up, a little more efficient though, we've got Fire Mine Vessel. Enters the battlefield, tapped, can tap for 2 mana of different colors. So again, we don't get that mana from it right away, but again, it is very efficient for us. Sisei's Ring also is very efficient too. Again, costs 4, taps for 2, gives us half the mana back that we put into it, and also we're getting 4 goblins just by casting this. Moving on, let's talk about tech number 2, Rock On, because there's some includes in this that you might be like, well, okay, well, this does something different, but why is that in there? The answer is, hey, they're cheap, and they're mana rocks, and they're fantastic with this kind of a commander. Fractured Power Stone costs 2, taps for colors, and we can roll the planner die, but we're not going to be doing that. Alter the Pantheon. This one does say, hey, your devotion each color and each combination is increased by 1. Cool. We don't really care about that. What we care about, again, is that this is a mana rock that can tap for 1, cost 3. Haired Envelope. Cool. The ring's going to tempt you to enter the battlefield. We don't care. It adds 1 mana. That's cool. Next up, Lapis Orb of Dragonkind. Tap for a blue, and also, hey, if we're casting a dragon spell we scry to, here's a hint. We don't have any dragon spells in the deck, and that is okay with us. Again, we can really take advantage of very, very specific and very, very cheap mana rocks with this kind of a deck. Again, $5, about $5 for this kind of a deck. Phyrexian Atlas. Again, this one says, hey, if it comes tap each opponent who has 3 more poison counters loses 1 life. If someone else is playing Infect, good for us, but if they're not, that's okay too. Power Stone Shard just taps for 1 because we're not going to be able to make any more copies of it, so that's fine. Spectral Searchlight, we can kind of make a deal with this if we really want to. Tap, choose a player. That player adds 1 mana of any color they choose, so sure, I guess you can get some extra utility out of this. Ticket, Turbo Tubes. We don't care about tickets, so yeah, just tap for 1 mana of any color. We don't care about getting tickets. And then Ichor Elixir, again, efficient, effective. Hey, 4, tap for 2, like a Sissy's Ring, essentially. But also, hey, if you'd roll 1 of our planner die instead of that many +1, we don't care about the planner die. What we care about, again, efficient mana rock, gets us 4 goblins. Gotta love that. Next up, let's talk about some mana rocks in tech number 3 with form and function, because these mana rocks actually have some functionality that can really help us out. Cultivator's Caravan, a 5/5 vehicle that costs 3 with crew 3, tap for 1 mana of any color, so again, just standard efficiency when it comes to, you know, your 3 mana rock tapping for 1. That being said, we can make this into a 5/5 very easily by tapping, well, at a certain point, maybe even just 1 goblin to crew it up. Moving on, Dungeon Map. Taps for colorless, pay 3, tap Venture in the Dungeon, activate as a sorcery, so some extra value can be had there. Found of Ikor, if we want to make this into a 3/3, we can. There you go. Just pay 3. Comes a 3/3 until end of turn. Nice. Next up, Honored Heirloom. This one can help us out against Reanimator strategies and other graveyard-based strategies. Tap for 1 mana of any color, pay 2, tap, exile a card from a graveyard. So yeah, that can really hamper. Again, you might not think it's going to be that impactful, but if someone's got a reanimation spell, they're going to be hesitant to utilize it when you've got this untapped. Next up, Is It Kirun? You can make this into a 2/1 blue and red elemental artifact creature, and if it gets through on a player, we get to loot, draw a card, discard a card. Then there's Magnifying Glass. Speaking of, you know, drawing down into our deck, this can tap for a colorless or pay 4 and tap, investigate, make a clue. Yeah, this can actually be some nice card advantage for us if we got excess mana, and yeah, again, we've got an absurd amount of ways that you've seen so far to make mana with this commander. Next up, Seer's Lantern. Not card advantage, but card selection. Pay 2, tap, scry 1. So again, dig down into your deck, get the cards that you need. Moving on, Spinning Wheel. This can actually be pretty brutal against our opponents. Pay 5, tap, tap target creature. Again, 5 mana is steep, but that can be a huge effect, especially if we're going to be trying to finish someone off. They might have a blocker or whatnot. And we're like, hey, you know what? Nah, yeah, you're not going to block. We're going to get through on you. We're going to hit for a ton. Or conversely, if we know someone's going to be swinging us with a big commander or something, yeah, we can tap that down. Next up, Unstable Obelisk. There's a very good card with this kind of a commander because, hey, yeah, this is just a mana rock that we can also sacrifice, destroy a permanent. Nice removal for us in the form of mana rock. Then finally, Volshock Factory. Tap for a red, you get a charge counter on it. Pay 2 and a red, tap, sacrifice, you get an XX color Golem artifact creature with haste. Rex the number of charge counters on it, activate as a sorcery. So yeah, this can actually become a pretty massive creature essentially for us. Moving on, we've got tactic number 4, Ramp and Reuse, because we've got some mana rocks that we can essentially use to dig down into our deck and get other cards, essentially. Mindstone, a great one. Cost 2, taps for a colorless, pay 1, tap, sacrifice, draw a card to replace itself. Tablet of Completion. Tap, put an oil counter on it. Tap, we can get a, get a mana, essentially, if we has 2 more oil counters on it, and by paying 1 and tapping it, we can draw a card if it's got 5 or more. So if we need to build up some card draw, we can do it with this. Next up, Bonder's Ornament. No need to build up with this. Tap for 1 of any color, pay 4 and tap, and each player controls a permanent. Name this, draws a card. Typically, your opponents aren't going to have this, so we're just going to be the only one who benefits. Next up, Commander's Sphere. Tap for 1 mana of our Commander's colors, and also sacrifice it to draw a card and replace it. Is It Locket? This we can draw even more. Taps for either of our colors. Pay, is it? Did I say that right? For Is It, regardless. Tap, sacrifice it, draw 2 cards. Letter of Acceptance. Tap for 1 mana of any color, pay 2 and tap and sacrifice it to draw a card and replace this. Network Terminal, a repeatable way to get some card selection. Tap for 1 mana of any color, pay 1, tap another untapped artifact you control, and yeah, as you've seen, we've got an absurd amount of artifacts. Draw a card, then discard a card. A Raska Relic. This is going to take absolutely no time to ascend and get the City's Blessing. Tap for a colorless, tap sacrifices, gain 3 life, draw a card, activate only if you've got the City's Blessing. Yeah, we're going to have that in no time. Hedron Archive, tap for 2, pay 2, tap sacrifice, draw 2 cards as well. Stone Speaker Crystal, again, against reanimated strategies, against graveyard-specific decks. This is huge. 4, tap for 2, pay 2, tap sacrifice this, exile any number of players' graveyards, draw a card as well. And then finally, the big boy, Dreamstone Hedron, cost 6. Taps for 3, efficient, effective, gives us a ton of mana, gives us a ton of gobos, and also pay 3, tap sacrifice, draw 3 cards so we can dig down into our deck when we need to. But speaking of digging down, let's talk about attack number 5, Refuel, Meeting of the Minds, instant for 3 and a blue, Convoke. Yeah, we've got an absurd amount of creatures with this kind of a deck, because we're going to be making an absurd amount of creatures with all of our instants and sorceries and artifacts and non-creature spells. Draw 2, essentially for just a single mana, because we can just have 3 gobos for that. Moving on, Tidings, draw 4 cards for 5 mana, and yeah, make 5 gobos because of that. Lower Seeker Stone, let's make 6 though. Pay 3, tap, draw 3 cards. It's going to cost 1 more to activate for each card in your hand. Yeah, even if we've got cards in our hand, again, we're going to have oodles and oodles of mana so that we can very easily pay for this, refill our hand repeatedly with a card like this. And then Opportunity, a great card as well. Target player draws 4 cards at instant speed for 6 mana. Keep in mind, if you've got mana open, your opponents also be pretty hesitant with swinging at you, even if you are, with no creatures that can block. If you have your commander in play, if you've got mana up, they can assume that you might have an instant. Again, this can make 6 blockers for you if you need them, essentially. Just draw 4 cards, instant speed. Absolutely lovely. But we can make even bigger gobbo armies. At tactic number 6, go big. Ingenious Mastery, a sorcery for X2 and a blue. We can just pay 2 and a blue if we just want to. That's fine. If we do, we draw 3 cards. An opponent creates 2 treasure tokens and they scry 2. But if not, if we dump an absurd amount of mana into that X like we're probably going to, yeah, we draw X cards. And again, we are making, depending on how much we put on that X, if you put 10 into that X, that's 13 gobbos. And again, that's kind of a minimum with this card, like 10 plus mana into something like this when we have all these ways to generate an absurd amount of mana, refill your hand, and then some, cast more non-creature spells, and yeah, just to demolish your opponents with some, army, essentially, of gobbos. Moving on, Evoke the Firemind. This can be a way to actually take your opponents out in multiple ways. Sorcery for X, blue, blue, and a red. Choose 1, draw X cards, or it's going to deal X damage to target creature or player. So essentially, removal if we need it for a creature, or just player removal. Again, with the amount of mana that we can generate, yeah, just pop someone, just take them out, essentially, with a giant spell like this, and all of a sudden, pop out of nowhere, they are gone. Or yeah, just draw an absurd amount of cards and make an army. What's not to love? Next up, Stroke of Genius. Instant speed. Target player draws X cards. Yeah, this can out of nowhere say, oh, by the way, you might not have thought I had a hand at all. Now I've got a giant hand for the next turn. And also, I just created an absurd amount of gobbos you're going to have to deal with. Thank you. Next up, Universal Surveillance. This one can actually utilize artifacts in a different way. Source for X, blue, blue, blue. Improvise, draw X cards. So again, yet another way to draw an absurd amount of cards, make an absurd amount of goblins. Finally, Transcendent Message. This one can get absurd. Instant for X, blue, blue, blue. Blue? 4 blue. Regardless, Convoke, draw X cards. So again, our creatures can help cast this spell. So yeah, if you've got, say, 40 goblins in play and you've got 20 mana or so, cool. You're going to make like 60 or so more goblins at instant speed, drawing 60 cards. You might mill yourself. Don't do that. But yeah, a great way to take your opponents out of nowhere. But let's move on to tactic number 7, recast, because we've got some spells that we can actually cast more than once to get extra value out of our commander and extra value out of the card. Una's Grace is a great one, instant for 2 and a blue. Target player draws a card, retrace. So again, you can cast it from your graveyard by discarding a land and paying its cost, essentially. Yeah, this is huge because this is a repeatable non-creature spell that we can cast again and again and again, and just throughout the game, as long as it's in our graveyard, keep casting it just by discarding a land. So get rid of potentially a dead card in your hand, replace it with something else, and make 3 gobbos every single time. Absolutely lovely. Next up, Chemist's Insight, a one-off effect essentially, versus, the repeatable retrace. Instant for 3 and a blue, draw 2 cards, jumpstart. So basically discard 1 card, pay its cost again. Basically, hey, draw 4 cards, make 8 goblins. What's not to love about that? Next up, Deep Analysis. Source for 3 and a blue. Target player draws 2 cards, flash it back for 1 and a blue, pay 3 life. So basically, yeah, you are getting, again, those 8 goblins, and you are getting them even cheaper, drawing 4 cards. Yeah, you lose some life, but that's okay. Ignite the Future. This one can be absolutely massive. Source for 3 and a red. Exile the top 3 cards of your library until the end of your next turn. You may play those cards. Spells cast from graveyard. Instead, you get to pay them up, paying their mana cost. Flash it back out of your graveyard for 8. Again, mana is no object in this kind of a deck. So basically, hey, make gobos and then get free spells. What's not to love? Speaking of that, finally, call the Skybreaker. This might not seem like a lot, but with this kind of a deck, it definitely is. Sorcery for 7 mana. Create a 5/5 blue and red elemental creature token with flying. Retrace it. So again, we can recast it. So make 7 goblins every single time, and also a 5/5 flyer. Yeah, your opponents are in trouble. But as we move on to tactic number 8, the Golden Pig. And the Golden Pig of this deck is Throes of Chaos, the number 1 card over 99. Source for 3 and a red, Cascade and Retrace. 2 words that are absolutely crazy together. Basically, again, when you Cascade, you reveal at the top of your library until you hit something that costs 1 less, or actually, well, not 1 less, but less than this essentially, so 3 or less, and then you basically get to cast that for free. And yeah, again, with that Retrace, you can keep recasting this again and again and again. It's a repeatable source, essentially, just an extra card that you can just keep recasting and casting a secondary card for free with it. So yeah, technically, when you're casting this, you can get like 7 goblins worth of value, right? If you hit a 3 CMC card, and you can keep doing that again and again and again. And yeah, the amount of value that you can get with this is absolutely absurd. Definitely, in my opinion, the Golden Pig of this deck. But as we want to tactic number 9, pump it up. Goblin Aura Flame might not seem like a lot, but it's huge in a deck like this. Enchantment for 1 and a red. Attack creatures you control get +1/+0. Yeah, we're going to be aggressive. We're going to be attacking. And all of a sudden, our creatures are hitting for twice as much. Yeah, your opponents are going to be looking out for something like this. Burn Bright. This one they might not know that is coming at them. They might, let some goblins through. Maybe they don't have enough blockers essentially to stop your goblins. And like 10 goblins get through. They might think they're okay. It's like, oh, it's just 10 damage. I'm fine. You cast this in speed for 3 mana. Creatures you control at +2/+0 until end of turn. All of a sudden, yeah, you've got 30 damage on them. This can just take opponents out of nowhere. So we're also running Dinosaur Stampede. Basically the exact same thing. Attack creatures get +2/+0 until end of turn. Also, dinosaurs you control gain trample. We don't really care about that. What we care about is the attacking creatures. Keep in mind you can actually utilize this in a political way as well. Can output opponents. Moving on, Ferocity of the Wilds. Attacking non-human creatures you control get +1/+0 and have trample. That trample can be absolutely massive. Again, get through with your little gobos. Our gobos are not humans. So yeah, we don't really care about the humans. We care about swinging with our gobos. Moving on, Volatile Claws. Instant for 3 mana as well until end of turn. Creature control get +2/+0 and gain all creature types. I guess I spoke too soon. They can be human, so that's a bit of a non-bow, but still, typically it's not going to come up, but it can still be a very good card for you. Next up, Orcish Aura Flame. Attacking creatures you control get +1/+0, so this is just, yeah, another way to essentially pump your army. And again, yes, it does cost more. That's fine, though. We're making 4 goblins with it. Then we got Street Riot. Enchantment for 5 mana. As long as you turn creatures you control get +1/+0 and have trample. Again, trample can be absolutely massive in helping us get damage through. A card like this can be huge throughout the game for us. And with that, this episode is coming to a close. So yeah, let me know what your thoughts are on it in the comments below. And of course, as always, thanks again and have a good one. This show and episodes like this one are possible thanks to viewers like you. If you're looking for an easy way to help support this show, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. Also, hit that bell notification icon so you don't miss any new episodes. You can also go check out our playmats and other merchandise at thecommandersquarters.com. We also have a ton of brand new t-shirt designs in stock, so make sure you check out those as well. Another easy way to support this show is with our TCG Player affiliate links. So whether you're buying a deck or individual cards, you can use this general link right here or one in the description. And the final way that you can support this show is by supporting us directly by becoming a patron. There are many benefits to being a patron, and I truly couldn't do this without all of their support.